Alright. Still no mic. We're doing our best. I'm going to try really hard not to kick the tripod. I make no promises. But one of my friends was telling me, she's like, you know what you should do? You should talk about how you even turn like an idea into a story. And I was like, that's a good idea. And I was like, yeah, I could do a video on that. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, I could do 4 videos on that. So, welcome to the 4-part series of how to turn your idea into an actual story. Like into a book that, like, you know, you could hold and give to other people, or like sell it for money if you really wanted to. We're going to break it down into four categories. So this week we're talking about characters. Next week we'll talk about plot. The following week is the writing blog, but the week after that it'll be talking about dialogue, and then the final one is something else that I apparently did not write down. I just know that there's a 4th one. The final one is all about themes. It's about themes. So, kind of like the 4 things that you want to think about. With character, I include setting in this, because I feel like your setting can also act as a character depending on, you know, what kind of book you're writing. So, one of the things I would say is if you have an idea, if you're like, oh, I really like the idea, so I'll tell you an idea that I'm playing with it, okay? I like the idea of a story about a school for orphans. I'm not sure if I want to go magical or not, but I like the idea about a school for orphans that is like pre-K to 12. They take in any orphan, and it's kind of Hogwarts style, where they're sorted into houses. Again, not actual houses, not actual sorting, but, you know, I'm just using these phrases because I'm assuming that you're familiar with Harry Potter, because, you know, a lot of the world is. And I like the idea, right? This is just like a concept of like, oh, that would be a really fun book, or a really fun book series, where you have these orphan kids that have no family, but they get to have like found family type situations, right? Where they're sorted into these different things so that they can have, you know, now they have older siblings and younger siblings, and they are treated like family, and the professors and the teachers would act as family, doing bedtime and like all these different things, right? Making sure everybody brushes their teeth before bed, and you know, reading stories and singing songs together, and all the things that you do for bedtime when you're an actual parent of your children, these adults would be helping to do for these children. No, there's no weirdos, there's no creeps. This is a world where we have good people. At least at the school. Maybe there's creeps outside. There'll be, you know. And so then, and then the kids go to the school, and hopefully they get adopted into families. But if they don't, they will graduate from high school with, like, you know, the kid's really into auto mechanics. He'll be like a certified mechanic by the time he graduates from high school. And so he has like a useful skill set that he can use outside of school. That's just the concept, right? Oh, that'd be kind of a cool story. And like, you could set it up so that, like, you know, book 1 was about, you know, this one particular kid. Book 2 could be about a different kid, and, you know, kind of make it like small town, cozy romance type stories where they have all the books they're intertwined, but you don't have to read them like in a specific order, right? They all like exist in the same universe, but you don't have to, like, or you could even have like little sets of, like, anyway. right? So that's kind of like a general story. That's just like a general idea. Like, well, how do I turn that into an actual book? Well, the first thing you would do is figure out characters, right? Which is what we're here to talk about today. So I'm giving you kind of the general idea, and now we're going to talk about characters. So the easiest place, at least for me personally, to start is, well, who do I want to write about? Well, I want to write about the teachers, right? I want to write about, like, the teachers and the staff at the school. So starting off with, like, okay, well, who's, like, the headmaster? Like, who's, like, the Dumbledore equivalent, right? And I'm 100% pantsing this right now in front of the camera, which is not 100% my style. I'm very much a planner. But this is part of that planning process as well. So, let's pretend, Lucy. Okay, that's her name. The headmistress of the school, her name is Lucy, and she is 57 years old, married to the auto shop teacher, and they've been married for, what did I say, she's 57? Let's say they've been married for 30 years, right? They were never, let's say, they were never able to have children. Is she the founder of the school, right? Like, you start to dig into the character. Like, what do we know about her, right? Is she the founder of the school? Let's say no, but she grew up in it. She was one of the orphans, and she came back and was unable to ever have kids. And when she realized that, she decided to dedicate her life to teaching, and the previous headmaster was the founder of the school. So what's his name going to be? Or her name? We'll do it in man. How about, I'm like looking at cans. Tomato paste. Like, no, that's a terrible name. I told you, I'm not good at names on the fly. Whatever. You give him a name, you figure out, and so you kind of go through character by character and kind of figure out what you can about each character, right? So it's like, okay, so let's pretend that we figured out the staff, right? We have the English teachers, we have some, and maybe one of the things that you do is, like, as you're starting to figure out, like, well, how many staff do I actually need? Like, how big is this school? And then you do a little bit of research. It's like, okay, well, if I had a school of 1,000 kids, how many teachers do I need? And this is pre-K through 12, or like, this is 0 to 18 as a orphanage / school. So I need people that are going to be taking care of the babies. I need people that are going to be taking care of the, like, I need preschool teachers and kindergarten teachers. Now, is there enough kids that we actually have them all divided by grade, or are there, like, certain grades where it's like some of the, we only have, this many elementary school kids, and so we've actually divided them into 2 classes because we have, we only have 3 first graders and 8 second graders and 2 third graders. And so we actually just stuck them all in the same class together and are doing it like more Little House on the Prairie style, where the teacher teaches one lesson and then has different grade appropriate activities or assignments for the kids to do so that we can, I don't know, whatever, right? Like, you figure out, okay, well, what are the mechanics, right? So the school itself will become a character of, like, what all do I need to know about it? How many kids can it fit? How are we dividing these kids, right? Figuring out, like, all the just kind of the mechanics of how do things work, right? And then once you figured out kind of the layout of the school, once you figured out your different staff characters, right? You figured out the character of the school, you figured out the character, and then where are you going to put it, right? This is one of those ones where you go, okay, well, if your inkling is towards magic, because let's be honest, that would be really fun, okay, we're going to immediately just jump into fantasy. Now, is this contemporary fantasy or is this high fantasy, right? Are we Lord of the Rings, totally new world, cool different systems of magic, different peoples, right? Do we have like hobbits and dwarves and elves all going to the school? Or are we doing like contemporary magic where it's like Harry Potter, where it takes place in our world, and there's things like cell phones, which I just unplugged, and there's things like computers, and there's things like cameras, but also we also have magic and mermaids and, you know, whatever, dragons, and so then you like once you figured out that little bit, then you can keep moving forward, right? And then once you've figured out, you've established kind of the character of your setting, right? Whether it's the school, and then where is it going to take, what universe is this taking place? Okay, it's on planet Earth. It's going to be in Kansas, right? Why not? Then you get to figure out, okay, let's talk about some of the students, right? Like, what's our max number of students, first of all, right? Like, we could say, let's see, there's, hypothetically, there's more than this, but we're going to hypothetically say that there are 10 students per Hogwarts house per school year. Like, so for example, the year Harry comes, there's 40 new students allowed into the school. And 10 of them go to Gryffindor, and 10 of them go to Hufflepuff, and 10 of them go to Ravenclaw, and 10 of them, right? And so we divide them out, right? So then you can do the math of like, okay, well, if there's 40 kids in first year, and this is how the number works every year, you know, first of all, that means that there's people being told no, which, I mean, we hear about Neville being like, oh, we weren't even sure if I would get in, I don't know. But then, I mean, you could also argue, well, it's a school of magic. If we need more rooms, we could just like poof them into existence, right? Whatever. But for the sake of simplicity, let's pretend you'd only get 40. Okay, well, 40 per year of students means that there are 280 students. Okay, well, how many teachers do I need for 280 students? Well, the way that she talks about having classes combined is that the Ravenclaws and the Hufflepuffs will take potions together. Well, that's 20 students per class. That's pretty decent sized class. I mean, that's less students in the classroom than my daughter had, you know, for her second grade, in public school. So it's not too bad. So, you know, anyway, so then you figure out how many students and how many, and you don't have to have a name and a backstory for every single one of those 240 students. 280 students. 4 times 7 is 280, or 40 times 7 is 280. I woke up at 5 this morning, so my brain juice is a little bit low. So you don't have to have okay, before I can even start writing this story, I have to have 280 names, and I have to have a backstory for every single one. No, you don't. Now, if you are the kind of person who is like, no, I want to, go for it, 100%. But if you're like, well, I really only need, like, 5. All right, cool. And then you can kind of invent them as you go along. Just make sure that you have some kind of book Bible. I would show you mine. I'm trying to think if there's a way I can show it to you without, like, giving a bunch of stuff away. Let's see here. If I do... Here we go. I can do this. Maybe. We'll see. Hold on. I'm gonna hold, please. I'm trying to show you stuff without showing you too much stuff. So here I have all of my characters. So we've got Emma and her family, Nellie and her family, Nikki and her family. So okay, if I click on Nellie, right, we have all these different files show up of the different family members in Nellie's family, right? And I can click on each one individually, and I've got some stuff written about, right? And my original plan was to go through and type up some different things about each person, so like you can see like with Joe's, I found this thing online where it says role, job, physical description, background, personality, what does she want, why does she want it, what does she want on a subconscious level, what does she need, what are her obstacles internally and externally, what happens if she doesn't get what she wants or needs, right? There's a whole bunch of different questions. If you want, I can post them or something, but let's see if I can do this. Okay, hold please. Okay. So, you can do something like that where you have like a Bible, right, of all the students or of all the teachers. You can have them sorted. So I have mine sorted into the main files are, so there's characters. Stop. Silly goose. So we have a file of characters, right? And then I have Emma, Nikki, Nellie, and then I have like plus fam, right? So plus their family. So I have Nellie, everything I need to know about Nellie, but then also Nellie's family members. So I have Nikki and everything I need about Nikki, and then also her family members. So they're all under the same file. I have a bad guys file. I have friends and teachers, and then it's like, okay, my friends and teachers are split over too, where there's high school friends, because that's where book 1 starts. They're in high school, but book 3, spoiler alert, we're going to college. So I have it split into friends and teachers, and there's a high school, and then there's the different universities that things happen at, and then I have one that's just called Other, where it's like, I don't necessarily, like, if you've already read the book, Gabby, the librarian, they don't know her from high school. Technically, they're in high school when they meet her, right? But they don't know her from school. They know her from the library. And actually, anyway, so I was going to get into it, and I was like, it doesn't matter. So you can do that, but just do something where you kind of keep track of, like, because I can't even tell you. I can't even tell you the amount of times I'm like, wait, what color are Nellie's eyes again? Did I make them blue, green, brown? I don't know. And then I have to go look it up. The amount of times I've looked up that girl's eye color, it's really silly. Or I'll describe somebody as something, and I'm like, wait a minute, didn't I already describe them this other way? And so being able to go back and have, like, a specific, oh yeah, here, I described them in book 1 in this way. But then if you're doing multiple books, you have the option of, like, showing that they're aging, right? Her hair was starting to turn gray or starting to thin or, you know, whatever. So I recommend starting off with characters because, at least for me, that is the easiest place to start. Because once you have characters, once you kind of get to know your characters, once you kind of start to think about, like, well, what do they want? What are they enjoying? Or, like, how can I throw them in situations, right? You start to learn a little bit more about them. You start to kind of learn their personalities. And a lot of the times, not always, but a lot of the times, the characters will actually show you the way forward in terms of the story. So, for example, right, we were talking about this magic, possibly school. Let's say, well, just for the sake of argument, we'll say that it is magic. And I have a teenage girl show up at the school. She's an orphan. We'll make her 13, so barely a teenager. And she hasn't lost her parents in any tragic accident. She, let's say, her dad's gone. Mom didn't know who dad was, and mom was really sick, and the daughter had been taking care of her for a really long time, and mom just passed, right? So not necessarily a big accident, no evil wizard trying to hunt her down, just mom was already on her own and got sick, and now her daughter's out in the world. And she ends up being picked up for this school, right? And she gets there, and she's a little resistant to the whole family thing because she's always been an only child, and She doesn't mind taking care of the younger kids, though, because she's got some let's call her Amanda. Amanda already has some, like, caretaker, nurturing tendencies from taking care of her mom. And so she gets there, and everybody, the younger kids are like, what's your power? And she's like, what are you talking about? What's my power? And they're like, well, everybody here has a power. And she's like, I don't think I have one of those. Like, and one of the kids is like, yeah, look at this. And she snaps her finger, a little flame. She's like, whoa, okay, so you weren't kidding. Like, I thought you were meaning, like, you know, oh, my power, my internal power. Like, no, you meant, like, real powers on the outside. Right? And so immediately we're getting this, like, a vibe for Amanda of, like, kind of this kid who is a little bit older than she actually is because life has demanded that she's taken a little more responsibility than the average 13-year-old needs to, or, you know, whatever, right? And so you can kind of start to see how a story will form around her, right? Because as you stick her into the situation of now being an orphan and being stuck in this school, there are natural questions that occur of, well, what is Amanda's power? And where's her dad, right? Is he going to show up, or do we just never find out, right? Anytime you have a character that they make specific mention of not knowing where that other parent is, there's a chance that that parent might show up later in another book or later on in the story or whatever, right? And so I'm working off of the assumption that you're not looking at a blank piece of paper with absolutely no idea of what to write at all and being like, I want to write a book. Well, what about? I don't know, right? Like, I'm assuming you have, like, some kind of idea already where you're like, well, I really like the idea of insert idea here. I recommend you start with characters. There's loads of different ways to do this. You can totally hop online and, like, search character profiles or character profile worksheets or that kind of thing, and there's loads out there that people will give you with similar questions of what's the character, like the basics of, like, character's name, physical description, and then what role do they play in the story. Are they a protagonist? Are they an antagonist? Are they a supporting character? Right? Are they a mentor-like character? Are they a father, a parent, a parental figure to the main character? Are they, you know, helping out the bad guy? Or, like, you know, right? What's the purpose of this character in terms of relationship to the protagonist? Is the character the protagonist, right? And then figuring out physical description and figuring out like emotional, mental state and all these different things. And then also figuring out, like, emotionally, mentally, not just state, but, like, what do we want, right? What is the character? And one of the fun things about writing a character is, at least for me, and you'll probably hear me say this a lot, I don't ever feel like I'm creating a character. I feel like I'm uncovering the character. I never feel like I'm creating the story. I feel like I'm piecing it together. I always joke that being a writer is kind of like being an archaeologist, where you're sitting there with your itty-bitty little brush, and you're sitting there like, ooh, I found a little bit of a bone, and you start to, like, sit there with the brush and get around it and get around it, and you're like, oh, it's a femur. And so you pull it out and you stick it on the big, clean slate, and you're looking at it, you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll see if I can pick them down. Oh, this looks like a, I don't know. And you stick it on the thing, and then as you slowly get pieces here, oh, that's not a femur, that's a fingernail bone. Okay, how big is this animal, right? Like, you know, and so as you piece it together, it kind of gets pieced together. Like, you start to see the big picture. And I find that the easiest pieces, typically, for me to find and uncover are the characters. So I hope that this was at least vaguely helpful. If not, I hope you enjoyed my rambling and all of my hands. And I will talk to you next week about plot. Because, yeah, I'm a plotter.